Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about something that completely transformed my life. That is detachment, and how it can transform yours as well and unlock your highest power. I want to talk about detachment not in the cold emotionless way that people like to imagine, but rather in the powerful, liberating way that helped me find peace within myself. So let's dive deep into what detachment really means, why it's misunderstood, and why embracing it gave me strength I knew I never had. So part 1 of this video is all about what is detachment really. Detachment isn't about caring, it's about caring without clinging. Like if you can think of, let's say for instance, a material possession you might have. Maybe it's your car. You care about your car because it gets you from point A to point B. However, if you cling to that car, then you protect it with like every ounce of your life, and you may even go to the extent by not taking it out on the road and allowing it to get you to where you need to go. However, if you are detached from that car, still caring without clinging, you can still take care of that car without fearing that it's going to be scratched or that you're going to get into a crash on the road, because you trust that the car is going to get you to where you want. And even if something bad does happen to that vehicle, you still know within that everything is going to be okay, and you show gratitude for the moments that that vehicle served you. And you can also think about it like this. Hold sand tightly in your fist. It slips away, but when you open your palm, it's gently there. That's what detachment is in an analogy. The second part of this that I want to emphasize is why detachment is power. You stop reacting and you start responding when you become detached from whatever it might be in your life. When you are detached, you are no longer triggered by every little thing. You gain emotional clarity with detachment. You also begin to reclaim your energy. Instead of pouring your soul into things you can't control, you invest in what truly matters. It kind of coincides with the analogy that you cannot pour from an empty cup. You care for yourself before you care for others. And I know this might sound selfish to a lot of people, but that is just the natural law of how things work. If you are trying to get to point A to point B in, let's say, a broken down vehicle, you have to work on repairing that vehicle first before getting yourself to the destination that you want to get to. This also works in the sense that if you want to go extraordinary lengths in your life to help others or achieve audacious, ambitious goals, you have to focus on healing yourself too. If you have any subconscious negative thoughts about yourself, if you have trauma or anything that might be causing some inner turbulence. And when detachment comes into the game, you become unshakable. Whether that's somebody praising you or criticizing you, you really don't care anymore, because you become so confident and so secure in yourself that you carry yourself with your chest high everywhere you walk, walking like you own the air. It really doesn't matter anymore how anybody responds to you. The only person whose opinions matter to you are your own opinions. I will include the example of my own. When I was a teenager, I was constantly worried about what others were thinking of me. And this didn't come naturally because I was bullied as a child, and that led me to become highly insecure. And being that I grew up in isolation, I constantly ruminated about this, and I was insecure and attached to so many things, whether it be my physical appearance, my weight, my personality, the way that I talked, or the way that I simply expressed myself. I cared how other people reacted to that, and I actually came to the point where I was delusional, where I thought other people were trying to plot against me, and constantly had negative thoughts about myself because I was so attached to what other people were thinking that I was almost hallucinating I was living in this delusional world where everybody was against me, and that kept feeding onto the idea that I was not good enough to be liked by others. But I had to take that brave step outside of my comfort zone and start distancing myself from the things that were holding me back. That's when detachment came naturally to me, as it did when I was younger. I began to feel super confident, and I started crushing every little goal that I have always wanted to achieve. I began to feel so confident that nowadays I just walk in the streets with not a care in the world, wearing whatever I want, saying whatever I want, without, obviously, maybe not saying whatever I want, but expressing myself without the concern for what others were thinking about me. I can speak publicly without stuttering anymore. I can have a face-to-face conversation with somebody, be looking them straight into the eye, and not be worried about whether they're thinking she's too extra. You know what I mean? When you become detached from whether it's material possessions or what other people think, that's when your power really starts to shine. Another thing that I want to talk about here is detachment in relationships. A lot of people think that detachment can be toxic when it comes to relationships. That can be partially true. However, detachment is very healthy when it comes to relationships. Here's an example I want to provide. I used to be deeply attached to people's approval, like I had previously insinuated. If somebody pulled away, I would spiral, I would overthink, I would analyze, and I would actually lose sleep at night. But once I learned to detach from that, by whether it was working or pursuing something I was really passionate about, I realized that I can love somebody deeply and still let them go. Their presence doesn't define my worth anymore. That shift completely changed everything, and I stopped chasing and started attracting everything that I ever wanted in my life. Again, I previously insinuated this. I just want to structure it a little bit more. I had this dream that I was obsessed with, and part of it revolved around being a content creator that I am now. But I thought achieving it would finally make me happy. But the more I clung to this idea, the more anxious I become, and out of fear of not being perfect on my first video, I actually avoided uploading content altogether. Then I detached from this anxiety that I had of not being perfect in my first video. And my first video wasn't great, but I really had to set my ego aside and tell myself that you are going to miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. Another example is inner peace, and I think this is probably the most important one because this comes from healing within. I realized that I was attached to my own thoughts and my doubts, especially the negative ones. I believed every fear that I had, every doubt. But then I started simply observing them instead of identifying them. Here's what I would do. I would just sit with my thoughts. I wouldn't ruminate on them. I would just watch them, almost like in a meditative kind of way. But I would not suppress my emotions while I was doing this. I just simply let my emotions pass through my body and observe them until it was gone. This is the number one technique that allowed me to detach from almost anything. Like, it's crazy. It works like magic. If you guys try this too, I promise it works. You just gotta put the reps in, and you gotta stay consistent if you wanna actually feel the results of detachment. And yes, I would also like to include that meditation helped as well. I'd say journaling also helped, but most of all, self-compassion helped the most, especially considering that I was very critical of myself and was more of a pessimist back then. I stopped fighting my emotions and suppressing them, and instead I decided to start listening to them and observing them. That is how I found peace within myself. My goal of being a content creator on YouTube is to help you guys overcome these fears and help you become your best selves, because I was in the same spot once. I was in a very dark place that I never thought I would be able to get out of. However, I had to set my ego aside and step out of my comfort zone to get to where I am now, living a happy life, being grateful for everything that I have manifested and accomplished. My final thoughts on today's topic is that I want to say that detachment isn't completely about being indifferent. Rather, I think it's about being free. I think it's about being free to love without fear. I think it's about being free to dream without desperation and being free to live without being chained to outcomes. If you're struggling with attachment, whether to people, goals, or even your own identity, know this, that peace is possible for you. Thank you guys so much for coming back to my channel and watching today's video. If this resonated with you, drop a comment below or share your own journey even. I love to hear your own story and point of view. Stay grounded and stay free.